We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
Ted on Facebook. A couple of weeks ago, Ted sent us some graphs of his bass response that he generated using Room EQ Wizard. With dual subwoofers and some EQ, he had managed to greatly improve some big peaks and dips around 40 and 60 hertz, but all of his graphs showed a fairly big dip around 120 to 150 hertz. We discussed the problem, said his measurements would be different if he had both subwoofers and a speaker playing, since the dip was happening in the crossover region. Ted now says that he was generating the bass sweeps using his MacBook Pro. He had it connected to his receivers using HDMI. So he has multiple receivers?
No, that's a typo.
Okay, good. And it was just sending out a full range signal, so Ted's speakers were active and the bass management was all happening inside his AV receiver. He's not specifically saying that his subwoofers were actually playing anything, but I'm inferring that that's what was going on.
Like, you're sending out the signal to the AV receiver is doing the bass management, so the signal's being played from speakers and subwoofers combined.
So the 150 hertz dip is the result when his speakers and subwoofers are playing together. With that knowledge, what advice would we have for fixing his 150 hertz dip?
So, Ted, you're going to love this, because he's enjoying taking measurements.
Yeah.
The first thing you need to see is that dip happening everywhere?
Yeah.
Or did you only measure in one position? Because you might find that from seat to seat to seat, sometimes it's a dip, sometimes it's a hump, sometimes it's flat. That's a possibility. That's very much a possibility.
This is the room with the open door, right? That he can't close because it's against the rules of the house or whatever the rules are, or something like that. Yeah. So that was the first thought I was thinking was, well, it's a room thing, and this happens. Mm-hmm. You know, there's oftentimes we have room measurements that you can't do much about. Also, change the height of your microphone when you're doing these different things.
But more than any of that,
yeah,
we actually want you to get some measurements of what we thought you were doing originally, which is only the subwoofers.
Yeah.
So only the subwoofers, no other speakers. Now, if the only way you can connect this is through your AV receiver, that would just mean physically unplugging all the other speakers from your AV receiver. That's fine. So
right.
Nothing wrong with that. So you just physically unplug all the speakers from the AV receiver. You still leave your subwoofers connected. You would probably want to adjust the crossover frequencies to the highest setting in the AV receiver. Because what we want to see is, how do the subwoofers, just the two subwoofers, how do they play in the room playing this bass sweep? Because here's
see if it's the subwoofers alone or if it's some interaction between the subwoofers and the speakers.
Because here's the really fun thing. You might discover, because you have dual subwoofers and that's helping even out the bass response in your room, you might discover that when it's only your two subwoofers playing, that you don't have this dip between 120 and 150 hertz, which opens up some very interesting possibilities that we'll get to in a moment. But again, you'd want to do the subwoofers playing by themselves, as high a crossover frequency as you can set in your AV receiver, so they're playing the whole sweep, and every seating position that you care about, not just one, because what we're looking for is uniformity. If we find, even if there is still a dip, if that dip is uniform, then we can think about applying EQ. So that's why we measure in all the seating positions. A lot of measurements, but that's the fun of it.
Right. And if it is the case that we have it everywhere, like Rob said, we can apply EQ.
Yep.
Or if it happens that when you play just the subwoofers, you don't have the dip anymore, you crisscross your subwoofers over higher.
There you go. See, that's the thing that people, they're like, I got to start crossing over my sub at 120 or 150 hertz. You can. And sometimes it works a lot better.
You will be surprised. You will be surprised how well it could possibly work. So, and because you have two subs, it'll be less localizable than it would be if you only had the one that was right next to you.
That's right.
Though he does have very large subs. So
yeah. So again, the trick ultimately, what you're hoping, and this is the ideal that is very hard to achieve, and if you don't achieve it, don't worry about it.
Right.
But what you're hoping to find is that in the end, you're playing your two subwoofers and one speaker, because it sounds like he's sending this mono signal, which means probably his front left and right speakers were both playing.
He might have a 7-channel stereo, dude, in which case it could be playing everywhere.
Yeah,
could
7 speakers and 2 subs, yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're hoping to find is one speaker plus your dual subs together produce a nice flat frequency response in every seat. That would be the absolute ideal. Exceedingly difficult to actually achieve.
Right.
But that's sort of where you're hoping to get to.
Yeah. So you mentioned before that since he still has his old front left-right speakers lying around, and they were M&Ks or something like that?
No, those were the ones he returned. I
Okay.
think these were Deftex, as far as I remember.
He was considering mounting them to the side walls next to a second row of seating so that you have 2 pairs of side surround speakers. Front for the front, one for the back row. Now he's thinking it might be better to use them as surround backs, but you want them to be above the heads of anyone sitting in the back row. And his back row is about 2 feet higher than his front row. And his back row was on the wall. Isn't it on the wall?
Yeah, it's more or less pressed against the wall, and he put it on some of those like bed-style leg risers.
Yeah. Okay. So, do the side surrounds and surround backs need to be the same height, or is it okay for the surround backs to be higher than the side surrounds? And what do we think would be better, 2 pairs of side surrounds or no surround backs, or traditional 7.2 with surrounds and surround backs? His room is like super duper tiny, though, right? It's like super tiny.
It's a small room.
I absolutely think you should just leave those speakers in the box.
Just leave it at 5.
Just leave it at 5. I know, Ted. It goes against the grain of everything we believe here at AVRant. Believe me, I understand what you're talking about.
It also means he's going to be testing 2 more speakers to make sure that they're absolutely flat when it's that one speaker playing with the subwoofer.
I know.
And it's not going to happen because they're at the back of the room, and he's going to drive him crazy.
I don't think that it's worth it. I don't think you'll get any benefit from it. I honestly don't believe that. I don't think having dual side surrounds, when especially they're not matched, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, his other side surrounds are what? Are they legacy ones
I don't
now?
remember.
I don't either. So, if they're not the exact same thing as what you're doing, then you're going to have 2 different impedance curves. You're going to have different. It's going to be you're opening up the kind of can of worms that every custom installer would go, listen, dude, if you really want me to do this, we're talking like $10,000 minimum. You're like, why does it take $10,000 to install 2 more speakers? It takes $5 to install new timber. It takes $9,995 for the headache you were going to give me because of the debacle that this is going to turn into.
And then you're going to pull out your measurement equipment and call me back. So,
that's right. Yeah.
Now, to answer the questions directly, it is fine for the surround back speakers to have a different height than the side surround speakers. What you're going for is a clear line of sight. So if you have tiered seating, you're probably going to have speakers that sort of, rise to go along with the tiered seating. The whole idea is to maintain a clear line of sight from every speaker to hopefully every seat. I mean, sometimes that's not achievable, but you get as close as you can. So it's totally fine for them to be different heights and them to be tiered just like your seating is. Because your 2 side surround speakers don't necessarily match each other, if you were going to do this, I would recommend going with the traditional 7 surrounds and surround backs. That's what I would recommend, but I agree with Tom. Your back row of seats is right against that back wall. I would stop at 5. So we're in agreement.
Totally stop at 5. He's not gonna stop at 5.
I
know he's not.
He's not.
This is what you do. This is what you do. You do not put side surrounds or surround backs. You get an Atmos receiver and you put top middles.
Yeah.
That is the only speakers I will allow you to have, additional speakers I will allow you to have into this room. Those are the ones. Then we can talk about front heights. But for right now, top middles. Top middles will make a difference. Way more so than anything else we're talking about. Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.